Meanwhile, in Turkey, the death toll has crossed 41,000 and it is not expected to slow down anytime soon. Rescue efforts are slow, the people are angry and they're venting out. For those who survived the earthquakes, there's another challenge: surviving the government's crackdown. Dissenters and critics are being put in jail in Turkey. The government of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan should ideally be focused on one front: rescue and relief to Quake survivors. But his government has another priority: incarcerating people for what they call provocative social media posts. 78 people have been arrested in Turkey in the past few days. What for? For creating fear and panic by quote-unquote sharing provocative posts about the earthquake and its aftermath. That's what the Turkish police says. What is a provocative post, though? That they've not specified. It is at the discretion of the government and the police. So they arrested 78 people. They've identified another 600. This is courtesy Turkey's General Directorate of Security. It says it has identified 613 people in all, again for making provocative posts on social media. Legal proceedings have been initiated against 293 of these people. If you know about this country's recent history, you will not be surprised by what's happening. Turkey has a distinguished legacy of curbing free speech. Last week, the government blocked Twitter for about 12 hours. Why? Too much disinformation, they said. The ban on Twitter outraged people. Many were using it to locate their loved ones, also to share information about rescue efforts, but the government blocked it anyway. It said there was too much information pollution. That's the term they used, information pollution. So critics are being silenced. Also facing the heat are builders and contractors. They built structures that could not survive earthquakes. So at least 130 people involved in shoddy construction projects have been arrested, which is fine. But what about the enablers? What about the authorities who allowed shoddy construction to take place? It's not like the government was not aware of what was going on. In fact, the government was an active participant. It helped builders to flout construction laws. And now it is looking for fall guys. Builders say they're being scapegoated and that the crackdown only focuses on the smaller players, not the builders with powerful connections. They aren't being touched, not to mention the political leaders who supported them. Erdogan wants to escape blame by showing that he is punishing the culprits. He has set up special departments to investigate. They're called the Earthquake Crimes Investigation Bureaus. What will they do? Collect evidence against builders and check required permits. What about collecting evidence against the politicians who allowed such projects? Again, no word on that. The rot goes right to the top, and I mean the president of Turkey. Old videos have come back to haunt Erdogan. In these videos, he can be seen bragging about allowing builders to take up construction projects without worrying about rules and regulations. In a video from 2019, this is what Erdogan said: "We have solved the problems of 144,000 Kahramanmaraş citizens with the construction amnesty." What is construction amnesty? A fancy term for allowing builders to ignore safety codes. That is construction amnesty. In another video, again from 2019, this is what Erdogan said: "We have solved the problems of 205,000 citizens of Hatay with zoning peace." What is zoning peace? Allowing builders to flout safety regulations. Erdogan has boasted of bending rules in at least 3 regions: Kahramanmaraş, Hatay, and Malatya. Do you know what the scary part is? The earthquakes have caused extensive devastation in the same regions. In the area where the quakes hit, 75,000 buildings were given amnesty by the Erdogan government. 75,000 buildings. This disaster was waiting to happen. It was sponsored by the government. In 2018, the country's urbanization ministry admitted that half the structures in Turkey did not meet safety standards. What did the government do about it? Nothing. Today, more than 41,000 people are dead. Here's how Erdogan's amnesties work. Consider yourself a builder. You construct a building that does not meet safety requirements, but you don't want the building to be demolished. All you have to do is pay a fine to the Turkish government. And the fact that your building is unsafe will not matter after that. There will be no demolition. Your building stays intact until it does, and the government gets to make money from the fines. In 2018, the amnesty scheme resulted in the government earning $2 billion in revenues. Now those buildings have turned to rubble. Erdogan is going after the builders. Anyone who questions his government's role is being put behind bars. He faces an election this year, the toughest of his life, they say. How he acts now may determine his fate. Now let's turn our attention to Nigeria. It is Africa's largest oil producer and most populous country. In 10 days from now, Nigeria is going to the polls. They will elect their new president. Until 1999, this country was under military rule. For the first time since then, the election is a three-way contest. The two old dominant parties and the third rising force. That's Peter Obi from the Labour Party. Opinion polls predict a win for him. But the result will depend on young Nigerians. A record number of young people have registered to vote this time. Nigeria's Chief Election Commissioner has called it the election of young people. And just days before the polls, there's anger on the streets. The government has taken out higher currency denominations from circulation. In India, we know this process as demonetization. Our next report looks at what's happening in Nigeria. Nigeria's outgoing president, Muhammadu Buhari, made an announcement on Thursday. He's granted a 60-day extension to turn in old banknotes. The new deadline is April 10th. Last October, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced demonetization. All higher currency denominations would be out of circulation. Why? To clamp down on black money, to stop the buying of votes before elections, and to turn Nigeria into a cashless economy. The deadline to submit old notes was January 31st. Most Nigerians did it. But new notes are hard to come by. People wait for hours in long lines, hoping to get the new currency. They're angry and protesting. The anger threatens to derail the upcoming elections. It's scheduled for February 25th.
We're all angry, we're all annoyed, we're hungry. Since morning, 4 o'clock, I've been here. I've not taken my breakfast. Why? I'm queuing up for 4,000 naira.
It's a very painful thing to me. And this is not Nigeria that I knew. Nigeria has turned to other things. People are suffering. You can see the queue here.
With the new deadline, Buhari has pushed the date for the chaos. Hopefully, banks will have new notes by then and Buhari will be out of office. He's not contesting the election. So the problems that follow will be his successor's headache. His party, the All Progressive Congress, is in a tight contest. It's a three-way race, in fact. Since military rule ended in Nigeria in 1999, elections have been dominated by two parties, the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party. They are the old guard. In a normal election, one of these two would be guaranteed the presidency. But this year, it's different. A third power is challenging them, the Labour Party with its leader Peter Obi. He's 61 years old, a seasoned politician, yet considered an outsider. He is the top choice of the youth. His supporters are known as the Obedience. And the youth will decide this election. About 40% of Nigeria's registered voters are below the age of 34. Opinion polls say the Obedience mobilization is working. Multiple surveys, including one released yesterday, say Obi will win. Presidential elections in Nigeria are a bit complicated though. A candidate can only win outright if they secure the most number of votes. This is obvious. But they also have to win at least a quarter of the votes in at least 24 states in the country. Nigeria has a total of 36 states. If no candidate manages to fulfill these conditions, there will be a presidential runoff. Nigeria's traditional party candidates may fare better in a runoff. With the demonetization delay, the ruling party may be trying to make their odds more favorable. The next few days will show us whether the scheme pays off. Businesses too are fed up with China. I'm talking about companies like Foxconn. They're punishing the dragon, and before I tell you how, I want you to look at some pictures. That video was from November last year. It was shot at a Foxconn factory in Zhengzhou. Foxconn is a Taiwanese company. It is the biggest contractor of Apple. It makes Apple products. What you see is the largest iPhone factory in the world. Massive protests had broken out there. The reason? A Wuhan virus outbreak. The entire factory was locked down, and with it, the workers. They were also not being paid their wages on time. It led to violent protests. The workers began to flee. Ultimately, Foxconn had to apologize. It couldn't take the pain of operating in China anymore, so it's moving out. Foxconn has secured a new factory site in Vietnam. It has signed a lease agreement. The iPhone maker is renting a plot of 111 acres. The lease will run through 2057. Last year, it signed an agreement, this for a new factory in Bakyang. The deal was worth $300 million. Foxconn already has a facility there. It makes products like iPads and AirPods. But the company wants to build a new factory now. In December, it also decided to relocate some of the MacBook production to Vietnam. Reports say the move is being executed quietly, and Vietnam is becoming the new hub for Foxconn. They're also expanding in India. In December, Foxconn announced fresh investment. $500 million will flow into Foxconn's Indian subsidiary. More workers will be hired. They plan to quadruple their workforce in India. They're already shipping products from India. Again, why is Foxconn doing all of this? To save its business. China's erratic policies are hurting operations. Foxconn's biggest client is Apple. This month, Apple CEO Tim Cook spoke to investors. He referred to the turmoil in Zhengzhou. Cook said the protest impacted production. I have a copy of that statement with me. This is what he said. COVID-19 challenges significantly impacted the supply of iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max and lasted through most of December. It's a telling comment on China. China was the factory of the world. It is fast losing that tag. Like Foxconn, several companies are moving out. Companies like Nike, Adidas, and Samsung. They've moved their production lines. In January, Canon decided to shut down a factory. Canon is a camera maker. It will close a part of its facility in Zhuhai. Then we have laptop maker Dell. They'll stop using chips made in China. They're also expected to move half of their production out of China. Reports say Sony has moved 90% of its camera production. From China, they've shifted to Thailand. India is also in the mix. New Delhi has rolled out incentives, especially for mobile phone manufacturing. We've already told you about Foxconn. South Korean giant Samsung is also on the list. India now accounts for 20% of its manufacturing. But there's a long way to go. China produces 70% of the world's smartphones. India's share is just 16% at the moment. There is a lot of room to grow. The semiconductor space is also heating up. Companies like Vedanta, Taiwan's TSMC, and the Tata Group want to set up factories to make chips in India. Consumer tech is an attractive space, but India needs to look beyond. What about other forms of manufacturing, like consumer goods? Manufacturing makes up only 14% of India's GDP. It is the right sector to bet on for growth. China's lapses have opened up opportunities. Now it's time for India to make the most of them. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Today is about the way of the water. Water covers 71% of the Earth's surface. 17% of the biological species on Earth are underwater. A magnificent world lives in the depth of blue oceans. We bring you pictures clicked by the winners of the Underwater Photographer Contest. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.
you investing?
Oh, China, it's just growing.
It's always been the manufacturing hub. Besides, India's struggling post-COVID.
Of course.
Sir, actually India's management of COVID has been much better. China's situation till date is unclear. After zero COVID lockdowns, China is gradually losing its supremacy as manufacturing leader. The country's share of global exports of footwear, furniture, or clothing accessories has fallen since 2016. Meanwhile, India has bounced back. So by the looks of it,
India could become the global manufacturing hub by 2030. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first of its kind global show with an Indian perspective.